The last thing anyone expected Earth to do was smile, especially after the ultimatum was issued. Admiral Vyrix of the Dravari Triumvirate leaned back in his throne-like command chair, voice brimming with condescension. One rotation. That is all the time we offer. Kneel, surrender, or burn with your tiny yellow star. No reply. Earth stayed quiet. The council laughed because silence meant fear. And fear meant easy victory. But in the black between their breath and arrogance, something began changing. Over a dozen warships floated in Terran orbit, forming a siege ring visible from the upper stratosphere. Civilians across Earth stood outside their homes, watching shapes drift across their sky. Some cried. Most just waited. And one little girl, standing barefoot in a wheat field, whispered, "Mom, why are the stars blinking?" Despite the stars weren't blinking. The Dravari flagship sensors GLITCHED, then surge. Then surge. Then ED. No weapon fired. No hacking attempt. Just drop. And in the dead quiet of the bridge, a human voice came through. No transmission ID. No encryption. Just voice. This is Earth Command. Acknowledging your ultimatum. Pause. We decline. Then it began. Not missiles. Not lasers. Not brute force retaliation. Earth turned off its own sun. Literally. The solar core dimmed. Photons slowed. Flare activity collapsed in on itself as the light above Earth faded from gold to ash. All 12 Dravari vessels scrambled, systems flickering. That's not possible. Vyrix hissed. Nothing can manipulate a star without, but it was happening. The sun wasn't detonating. It was obeying. Lights dimmed in every system, still clinging to arrogance. And from the black, Earth's ships began to move. Not many. Just 3. But even one moved like mythology. They weren't sleek. They weren't glowing with energy. They looked like slabs of regret sharpened into blades. And still, Earth hadn't fired a shot. Psychological flip on board one of the orbiting Dravari ships. Lieutenant Corrin broke formation. "Sir, what are they doing? What tech is this?" "It's a bluff." Optical deception. The console beneath Corrin's hands melted. Not exploded. Melted. He screamed. No one else did, because the officers around him were already gone. Not dead. Gone. Erased. Silence fell again. A new human voice came through, this time calm, casual. If your first tactic was threatening a world beneath a dying sun, you should have asked yourself why we let it die so easily. Back on the ground, the little girl stared up, her eyes wide. "Mom, I think Earth's mad." And that was before Earth even responded. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. When the sun went dark, the universe blinked. Not because it lost warmth, but because it lost certainty. The Dravari fleet, once wrapped in formation like a noose around Earth, now drifted in disarray. Panic shimmered beneath every order. Scanners failed. Shields overloaded. And no one knew where the human ships had gone, because they didn't fly, they appeared. "Where is the Terran fleet?" Vyrix barked. "Sir, we're reading no heat trails. No propulsion. They're not behaving like ships." "They are ships, Lieutenant." "Are they?" Below the command deck, Tactical IIVREN-6 folded its appendages inward. Fleet cohesion compromised. Morale collapse spreading. Orders? Vyrix's? Answer came out more like a prayer than a command. Find the sun. Bring it back. AVD spike on Earth. Darkness stretched across continents. Yet no one screamed. No fires. No riots. Because Earth wasn't panicking. They were preparing. In a control chamber deep beneath the Siberian crust. Human officers stood at their stations, lit only by pulsing interface blue. Commander Ray Carter stared at the timeline. 72 minutes before they break rank, she muttered. And 33 before the first of them begs for mercy. Her aide frowned. How can you be so sure? Carter didn't blink. Because we didn't just turn off the sun. She pointed to the silent hologram in the center of the Ruma. Pulsing field around the star's core. We made it ours. In the void above, the Dravari flagship screamed across emergency bands. We do not seek escalation. We wish to parley. No answer, only static, and then a countdown.silent.white.unlabeled.tactical turn. The Dravari had invaded worlds before. They'd crushed rebellions, wiped out moons, enslaved species, but nothing prepared them for an enemy that didn't threaten back. Earth just watched and waited until one of the Dravari cruisers snapped. We're initiating first strike. All weapons fire on Earth. 12 ships armed. 12 ships targeted. 12 ships vanished. Not destroyed. Vanished. No debris. No trace. One blink, then gone. Back in Siberia, Carter tapped her console. Sunlock reached. Echo initialized. Her aide looked pale. What's Echo? She turned toward him, voice low. Echo is what light remembers after you try to rewrite truth. Emotional shift in the council chambers of the Dravari homeworld. Silence choked every breath. One elder rasped, They are. Burning their own star? No, the science overseer whispered. They're weaponizing absence. The elder stared. At him lost. That's madness. No, his voice cracked. That's human. Psychological hook aboard the last surviving scout ship fleeing the system. A pilot recorded one final message. If you ever hear this, know that Earth didn't resist because it couldn't fight. He turned the camera to his face. They waited because they chose the moment you'd regret living through. The screen cut to black. They thought it was desperation, but Earth was. Never desperate. It was deciding. The Dravari sun monitoring satellites began reporting anomalies. Across a dozen systems. Not in their stars. In the space between them. Dark matter currents shifted. Gravitational paths twisted by fractions too precise to be natural. Something unseen was tugging at the galaxy structure, and it was centered on Sol. But even with physics unraveling, the Council still clung to its pride. They're bluffing, said first strategist Carl. Turning off their sun was suicide. They're just desperate. Desperate? Replied a younger voice, Turek, the only survivor from the vanished cruiser formation. You didn't see them. They didn't panic. They didn't even flinch. What did they do? They watched. U.S., Turek whispered. Like we were termites scratching at the door. Inside Earth's lunar command relay, something ancient began to awaken. Not AI, not machinery. Doctrine. Cold, measured, beautiful in its cruelty. Carter stood at the center console, surrounded by Terran silence, the kind that wasn't absence. But discipline, Phase 3? Her officer asked. No, she said. We're still in Phase 0. 0? She glanced at him. Phase 0 is the part where we let them invent our weakness. In orbit, the remaining Dravari forces repositioned, new protocols, defensive stances. Emergency backup fleets summoned from nearby sectors. A voice echoed across encrypted channels. We have taken Earth too lightly. But their tech is still bound to known laws. If we push hard, a whisper cut through the feed. Not broadcast, not signal. Whispered, you think laws stop us? And one by one, the secondary fleets went blind. No explosions, just void where ships once were. Tactical turn, the sun pulsed. Not in light, but in memory. Across systems, lightspeed data relays played strange backlogs footage of battles that never happened. Soldiers screaming in wars they never fought, stars collapsing centuries too early. Temporal interference? One Dravari scientist guessed. No, said a terrified technician. They're replaying possible futures, all of them, ending with Earth's silence and our absence. Dravari homeworlds prepared evacuation paths. No official orders were given, but people knew, cities sealed. Vaults emptied. Memorials built preemptively, because even though Earth hadn't sent a fleet, hadn't crossed a line, every system felt it, like the hum of a blade just before it sings. Inside Earth's vaults, the original Black Protocol was uploaded for the first time in centuries. It didn't contain coordinates or war plans. Just one question. How do you erase a civilization without touching it? Carter looked down at the terminal. Then up at the dark sky. We answered that once, she murmured. Let them ask again. They thought Earth needed light to fight. But Earth doesn't fight with light. It fights with what follows after it's gone. ChatGPT said, the Dravari Empire tried silence next, not surrender. Just silence. No transmissions. No threats. No movements. In Earth's direction. As if they believed that, by pretending nothing happened, the Terrans would forget what had. But Earth didn't forget. It remembered everything. And when the Terrans remembered, the sky changed. 1 hour after the last Dravari command went dark, the stars above the neutral zone blinked out, not from power loss, from alignment. Thousands of Terran ships, small, silent, invisible until they chose to appear, formed a wall between galaxies, a boundary, a message. This far. No further. On the Dravari homeworld, panic disguised itself as diplomacy. We must send an envoy, said one counselor. To say what? Another spat. Sorry we threatened to burn you with your own son? Someone else finally whispered it. We didn't threaten. We promised. They responded with absence. And that was when the internal purges began. AVD spike on Earth. The sky was still black. Sunless. But crops thrived. Cities glowed. Oceans pulsed with artificial tides. The world had adjusted, not struggled. Because Earth hadn't killed its sun. It had learned to live without it. Inside the Atlas core, where ancient Terran technologies hummed beneath miles of ice and silence, a signal was prepared. Short. Encoded in 6 frequencies. It contained only a single line of text, in every known galactic language. You told us to kneel, so we removed the sky. No fleet moved. No follow-up came. They just sent it. Tactical turn. The Dravari War College dissolved the next day. Not from attack, but abandonment. Its generals had defected. Not to Earth. To nothing. They vanished. Some fled. Some simply walked into dark rooms and never came out. Because what do you do when every calculation, every doctrine, every smug prediction is swallowed by a world that rewrote the rules, then erased the chalkboard? Emotional shift on the moon of Kevaltor. A minor mining colony still loyal to the Council picked up an unexpected transmission. Child's voice again. Different this time. I used to be afraid of the dark. Static. But now the dark is ours. Psychological hook in the deep space embassy of the Herath Combine, far from the Dravari systems. Diplomats huddled around a recording smuggled out from Earth's edge. It showed a Terran vessel slowly rotating in low orbit. No sound. No color correction. Just a symbol etched across its side. An open eye. No words. No crest. Just the knowing. And every diplomat who saw it felt the same thing. They weren't being watched. They were being judged. They thought Earth needed to win a war. Earth never wanted war. It just wanted to be left alone. And now, it never would be again. The darkness became doctrine, not a tactic, not a bluff, a truth. And every species that had laughed at Earth, mocked its old blue skies and primitive rockets, now built observatories just to confirm one thing. The sun was still off. Still obedient. Still under Terran control. In Dravari space, temples were erected not to gods, but to the absence of light. They called it the day the fire stopped. Children whispered it like a myth. Soldiers recited it like a curse. But Earth said nothing, because Earth had already spoken. Aft Spike inside Earth's orbital shadow fleet, Commander Ray Carter, stood alone in the viewport of the dreadnought Sable Vow, eyes locked on the stars that no longer shined. Her XO approached, hesitant. "Ma'am, we've received over 100 new communications from species across the quadrant. More threats? Apologies. Please. Promises." Carter didn't look away from the void. "And from the Dravari?" The XO hesitated. "They've requested ... peace." A pause. "What was our last message to them?" Carter asked. "We decline." She exhaled, slow. "Then let the silence continue." In the council chambers of the fractured Dravari command, panic now wore diplomatic robes. "Maybe we misunderstood them," a former general muttered. "No," said Turek, the survivor, his voice low, hollow. "We understood them perfectly. Tactical. Turn a probe launched toward Sol the next cycle. Not from Dravari hands, none of them dared any more, but from a neutral faction desperate for answers." The probe crossed Neptune's orbit. And then it saw it. The black structure. A colossal construct, tethered just above the dormant sun, impossibly still, absorbing no energy, emitting no signal, but somehow alive. The probe sent one image. Then was erased. Not destroyed. Erased. As if it had never existed at all. A VD. Spike in Earth's deep space vaults. Carter reviewed the probe footage. "Release the simulation," she ordered. Her crew watched as the system predicted. Alternate outcomes. Earth loses the war. Earth surrenders. Earth negotiates. Every outcome ended in the same line scrolling across the screen. Unacceptable. Terran identity breached. What does that mean? Someone asked. Carter replied without blinking. "It means we built ourselves so no one could erase us again." Psychological hook. In a distant alien classroom, a young student raised their hand. "Teacher, why don't humans smile anymore?" The teacher, who had lived through the day the sun went quiet, stared out the window. "They do," she said, softly, "but not when someone's watching." Emotional shift aboard the last functioning Dravari supercarrier. A crewman found a file hidden in their archives, unmarked, undated. He played it. A human voice spoke. "Tired kind. War isn't about who fires first. It's about who can survive silence." He played it again. And again, because something in him understood now Earth wasn't quiet because it was weak. It was quiet because it knew it would be the last one left speaking. Signature line. They didn't dim the sun to blind the galaxy. They did it so everyone could finally see. They sent a peace envoy next, not from the Dravari Council, what was left of it, but from a coalition of terrified species desperate to prove they hadn't laughed too loud. They dressed it up in protocol, ancient treaties, gesture tokens, DNA trust locks. The vessel bore symbols of unity. It docked gently in lunar orbit, declared its peaceful intent in every major language, and waited. Earth, let it wait. 10 hours. No. Response. 12 more. Still nothing. Inside the envoy ship, nervous diplomats debated. Should we repeat the transmission? They heard us. How can you be sure? Because the sun's still off. A VD spike, then the lights flickered, not violently. Not in warning. Just once. And Earth finally responded. One signal. No voice. Only a file. They opened it. Inside. A log. Not recent. Decades old. A human fleet recording timestamp before first contact with the Dravari. A quiet voice narrated over dark footage. We trained in silence. Built in shadows. Not because we feared war, but because we feared. being the ones who needed it. The clip cut to visuals. Human vessels obsolete by current standards, drifting beside black monoliths. Not testing weapons. Testing erasure. Ships disappearing from view. From memory. From records. One diplomat murmured, they were preparing for this before we ever met them. Tactical turn. Commander Carter received the envoy log, reviewed the decoded reactions, and made no announcement. She walked to the war table, placed her hand on the dead center of a hollow solar map. Begin. Fade in, she said. Ma'am, that would bring the sun back online. For 3 minutes, she interrupted. Just enough to remind them. Moments later, the sun flared briefly. All across the galaxy, observatories cheered. Systems lit. Generators re-synced. And then, darkness again. Longer this time. As if the sun resented being touched. Inside the envoy vessel, lights died. Backup systems refused to engage. An audio file played uninvited over the comms. You don't control peace by offering terms. You earn it by surviving your worst mistake. Then silence. Emotional shift. One diplomat began crying. Not from pain. From clarity. They weren't bluffing. They never were, another whispered. They just waited until we gave them a reason. Psychological hook. Aboard the Terran flagship, a junior officer spoke into the void of his private terminal. Sometimes I wonder if we went too far. The AI paused before responding. We did nothing. He nodded slowly. That's what makes it worse. Earth didn't turn the sun off to win a war. They did it to remind the galaxy. We survived without light once. The sun didn't rise the next day. It wasn't supposed to. Every Terran schedule, every calibrated orbital cycle, every city grid across Earth now followed its own internal rhythm. No longer bound by the star that once ruled them. They didn't miss it. They had moved. On. Above them, the envoy ship floated lifeless. Not attacked. Just discarded. Its message had been heard. Its desperation noted. But Earth wasn't interested in apologies that only came after fear. Across the galactic network, rumor became panic. Dozens of species went dark voluntarily, cutting off communications, hoping invisibility would buy safety. Entire fleets powered down. Borders dissolved overnight, and still Earth said nothing. That silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like the moment just before a verdict is read. Avid Spike, in orbit above Europa. A Terran vessel drifted alone, not military. A medical ship. Its side panels opened slowly, releasing pods. Each one carried supplies, food, medicine, vaccines. Targeted at colonies. Earth should have called enemies. No announcement. No press release. Just mercy delivered to those smart enough to kneel early. Commander Carter watched the dispatch logs from the Sable. Vow, why help them? Her aide asked quietly. They mocked us. They still remember how, she answered. That's something. But they don't deserve. Carter turned. Deserve doesn't enter into it. They feared us. Now they'll fear our kindness even more. Tactical turn. On the Dravari border moons, statues of the sun god were quietly taken down. In one city, citizens gathered to watch as their leaders melted a ceremonial blade once used to swear vengeance against Earth. They recast it into a beacon. Its light blinked once, then died. No one tried to fix it because the message was clear. Some things shouldn't shine again. Emotional flip in an underground Terran training facility. Cadets studied old footage back when Earth still pleaded to be left alone. One paused the video. A woman's face, human, barely holding tears. Why didn't they listen to us? The cadet asked. The instructor didn't speak. He just played. The next clip. An explosion. A child's drawing in ash. And the instructor's only words were, they did. Just too late. Psychological hook aboard a neutral listening post in the Hadrex cloud. 2 alien technicians huddled in silence as a Terran. Signal passed by their instruments. It wasn't directed at them, but it was heard. A whisper layered. Under old Earth music, you thought the dark was weakness. Then static. Then humming, not code, not transmission. Just someone breathing, slow and calm, from somewhere no one could trace. The tech shut the system down, because if Earth was breathing again, something was about to happen. The stars were still gone. It had been 12 days since the sun blinked out. And the galaxy was still counting how many empires had folded from fear alone. None of them had been invaded. None of them bombed. And still planetary systems collapsed. Chain reactions triggered by a single truth no one had ever dared imagine. Earth had stopped asking to be understood. They simply became what the galaxy deserved. In the great vaults of Dravari Prime, where centuries of war trophies were displayed, a new order was issued. Everything taken from Earth was to be returned. No ceremony. No apology. Just crates, sealed and loaded onto unmanned ships, launched in Earth's direction like offerings to a god that didn't care if you were sorry, only if you were quiet enough to be left alone. Inside the council, what remained of the military castes gathered around the last strategic interface. There has to be something, one of the generals whispered. Some weakness, some hole in their tech. Another responded with haunted eyes. It's not their tech. AVD Spy Commander Ricardo stood inside the Atlas array, watching replayed footage from one of Earth's earliest fleet tests. Before first contact, before all the silence. In the video, a small prototype vessel approached a synthetic singularity, a test of how close a human ship could get to an artificial black hole before folding. The ship didn't turn back. It didn't stop. It passed through. No shielding. No exotic matter. Just momentum, intent, and human stubbornness. The ship had no crew, but it had a voice. I am not the weapon. I am the reason it exists. Carter froze the frame. The ship's ID, USS Eventfall, the first Terran ship to disappear willingly into oblivion and return with knowledge the galaxy hadn't dared to imagine. She looked at the mission log underneath. 1 line. Darkness is not the opposite of light. It is its teacher. Tactical turn. At the edge of the Galactic Accord territories, a meeting was held in secret. Dozens of alien species, former warlords, tech empires, pacifist sects debated. One question: do we strike first while Earth is still watching? No, said the envoy from the Zarn Hive. You don't strike shadows. You just pray they're not looking at you. But a minor power Keth Alliance disagreed. We must show strength. They launched 6 dreadnoughts into Sol's Dead. Light. Not to attack. To stand. Their message: we are not afraid. They arrived. And Earth responded. Not with fire. Not with words. With a mirror. The Terran fleet appeared in silence, each human ship mirroring the position and model of the 6 Keth vessels exactly. No movement, no power surge. No weapons raised. Just presence. The Keth commander sent one last message. What game is this? A human voice replied. No game. Then the Keth ships began to age. Not physically, but their systems glitched. Loops crashed. Navigational logs filled with centuries of false memory. Time collapsed inward. By the time they powered down, their clocks read 9,000 years old. They were removed from the galaxy's grid before they could even return home. Emotional. Shift in an Earth refugee satellite orbiting Mars, an old man played a piano in a room no one visited anymore. He'd been a child when the Dravari ships arrived the first time. He remembered the way the news tried to be calm. He remembered the way his mother didn't. But now, decades later, he played something soft, something wordless. And in the silence, between notes, The fear didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt like warning. It felt like what kept you alive. I always thought we'd fight back, he whispered to no one. But this is better. Psychological hook somewhere in deep space. A pirate vessel intercepted an unshielded data capsule. The crew debated opening it. Was it a trap? A virus? They played the file. A Terran face appeared. A soldier. Old, tired, eye patch, gray stubble. I don't care what banner you fly, he said. But if you ever think Earth owes you anything, remember this. The camera shifted. Outside his viewport, Earth, cold and beautiful. Behind it, nothing. No sun. No light. No time. Just black. You stole our warmth once, he said, looking right through the screen. Now you live in the shadow we learned to love. He ended with one line just before the capsule disintegrated. You call it fear. We call it home. They didn't turn off the sun to threaten the galaxy. They did it to show the galaxy. They'd already survived what others still feared. And if needed, they'd survive it again. Darkness had become natural. Not feared, not mourned. Just accepted. Across the galaxy, species that once ridiculed Earth's fragility now built entire doctrine schools around Terran silence. Galactic militaries rewrote training to account for Terran anomaly encounters. Diplomats studied Earth's history like ancient scripture. But even then, no one truly understood them. Because Earth didn't escalate. They endured. And that was worse. In the central archives of the Shurian Singularity, Accord, an intelligence analyst, stared at a repeating loop low-resolution footage from the day the sun went out. 73 times he had watched it. On the 74th, he finally noticed it. The Terran ships weren't circling the star. They were orbiting its silence. Avd spike on Earth. Time flowed without sunrises. Children learned the days by pulse. Rhythms lights that surged across city domes in calibrated waves. A young boy asked his father one morning, "Will the sun ever come back?" The father smiled. "Only if the stars remember how to behave." He paused. "And if they don't?" The man looked up through the dome. "Then we'll remind them. Again." In deep orbit, Commander Carter stood before a wall of silent ship still, dark and unlit. She turned to her eye officer. "Status?" "Galaxy. Compliant. Communication. Cautious. Threat index. Decaying." "And Terran morale?" The AI hesitated. "Unified. Tactical. Turn in a dusty archive vault on a neutral moon." An old linguist uncovered a pre-contact transmission Earth had sent out 100 years ago. No one had listened back then. Why would they? It was audio only. Poorly encoded. It opened with static. Then a voice, female, soft, laughing. "We know you see us as small. It's okay. We saw ourselves that way too." A pause. "But here's the thing about small things. When they break, they become shrapnel." The file ended with a faint sound like a heartbeat, but layered under it, solar radiation. Patterns. Earth had encoded star commands inside the message. They weren't speaking, they were testing. Psychological. Hook the Dravari, once feared, now lived behind shielded moons. No ships deployed. No parades. No war music. Just silence. Until one day, a human ship drifted into their system. No message. No landing. Just a single flare shot, upward, non-destructive, bright, warm. It looked like a sunrise, and then it faded. No threat, no damage, just a question. Are you ready for light again? Emotional shift in a Terran classroom buried beneath the Atlantic. A student raised their hand during history cycle. Why didn't we destroy them? The instructor closed their tablet. Because we wanted them to remember us at our quietest. A beat. And they still trembled. The student nodded. Then looked toward the dark ocean beyond the glass. Do you think they're still watching? U.S.? No, the teacher said. They're remembering. Earth didn't teach the galaxy fear. It taught them what came after it. What happens when you make the quiet ones build in the dark for too long? They stop needing your light at all. ChatGPT said. They never turned the sun back on. They could have. The system was ready. The sequence stable. A single pulse from the Atlas core and the light would return, warming Saul's children again. But Earth chose not to. Because now, the darkness was a monument, a message carved in the sky. We survived you. And it echoed louder than any superweapon ever could. In the galactic outer rims, new civilizations rose whispering Earth's name like legend. Not conquerors. Not tyrants. Keepers. They taught their young to never send ultimatums toward blue worlds. To never judge quiet planets. And most of all, never mistake silence for surrender. A VD spike on the bridge of the Sable Val. Carter stood watching the dark horizon where the sun used to live. No lights. No banners. Just memory. Her officer approached. Ma'am, reports say some systems want to send emissaries again. Full reparations. Carter didn't answer. They're asking if we'll let the sun rise again. A long pause. Then, tell them no. The officer nodded slowly. Why? Carter's eyes didn't blink. Because they haven't earned the morning. Tactical. Flip in the great memory archives of the Seraph Union. A chamber once reserved for battle maps now displayed a single image. A Terran child standing under a black sky. Smiling. The caption below read, They dimmed their star to show us our own. Shadows. In silence, the galaxy rewrote its myths. Earth was no longer a minor anomaly. It was a lesson. A warning, a mirror. Psychological hook. Years later, a new fleet emerged on the edges of Terran space. Not hostile, just lost. They never announced themselves. Never powered weapons. They arrived and waited. Earth sent no ships to meet them. No voices to greet them. Only a message, ancient. From the day the sun first died, you thought the dark would frighten us. Emotional shift aboard a listening post. That message looped until one of the newcomers spoke aloud. But it did frighten us. They turned to the window where Earth drifted below, brilliant, black, burning in silence. And that's why. We'll never forget them. No warhead. No army. Just absence. That was the real weapon. That Earth never needed light to be seen. The sun remained dark. Not because Earth couldn't restore it, but because they didn't need it anymore. And neither did anyone else. They thought we'd surrender. We turned off the sun instead. The end.